After calling it a ball of worms with no apple left, the Trump administration hit the U.S. Agency for International Development with a wrecking ball. Has it strayed from its original purpose? My next guest can offer some perspective. He spent 5 years as USAID administrator during the George W. Bush administration, now a professor and director of the Snowcroft Institute of International Affairs at Texas A&M. Andrew Natsios joins me now. Mr. Natsios, good to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
And you have been speaking out, I think, in writing about what is going on at USAID. And even as a Republican former administrator, this doesn't look too good to you, does it?
Well, I'm outraged by it. What Musk has said is a bold-faced lie. There is an obsession with accountability at AID. What he does is he brings these young kids in their early 20s who are techies. I don't even know if some of them have been outside the country. They certainly don't know anything about development. And the aid procurement system is very complex. Unless you've been trained in it, you don't even know what you're reading, okay? When he says it's a ball of worms, it is not a ball of worms. It's a complex system to get thousands of NGOs, women's groups, farmers groups, businesses around the world and in the U.S. We connect. Last year, through a thing called the Global Development Alliance, which I developed in 2001, been around now for 24 years, through Democrat and Republican administrations, and it takes money from corporations and matches it with AID money. We don't give them any money. They don't give us any, but we jointly fund aid programs in the developing world. And I'll give you an example. We had a coffee program that's very famous in Rwanda. Coffee, before we started, it was the worst coffee in Africa. It was Rwandan coffee, $3 a pound. It's $12 a pound now, the last time I looked. And who are we doing with? Starbucks and Green Mountain Coffee, okay? They're funding 75% of it. They're not doing this for charity. They're doing this because they want high quality of coffee. It increased coffee farmers' income by 450%, 50,000 farmers, and their incomes dramatically rose. Kagame, the president of Rwanda, talks about it all the time. He doesn't mention it as an aid project. Those kinds of public-private alliances amount now to $6 billion a year from corporate America. Corporations aren't running around saying AID is a can of worms and all this rhetoric from Musk. He's doing that, and OMB is doing it, because they want to save money in the budget. Now, I happen to think the federal budget deficit is catastrophic for our economy. Both Trump and Biden are responsible for it. It's not just Biden. Trump had a $1 trillion budget deficit before COVID in his first term.
Sure.
They're trying to fix it. The problem is it's because of the entitlement programs. They're not cutting the entitlement programs or reforming it. They're cutting the rest of the federal government, which is nuts in my view.
And a small piece of the overall spend anyway, if you really look at the
Exactly.
numbers. But getting back to USAID, is there any evidence at all that, is there any germ of truth in that it might have strayed from its mission in some of the grants that it's made for parades and cultural affairs and this kind of thing?
Sure. We transfer our cultural wars in the U.S. to our aid program. And AID does it because both parties do it. I'm a conservative Republican. I'm not a moderate, okay? They'll tell you I was the most conservative administrator in the history of the agency. But the career people helped me do what I need to do because I was strengthening the agency, not weakening it, okay? When the conservatives take over and the Republicans take over, they move AID right of center. When the Democrats take over, they move it to the left of center. And the career people, if you trust them and treat them respectfully, which this administration is most definitely not doing, they will help you do it as long as they think, and they'll tell you, if you do this, you're going to get into a lot of trouble. This is illegal, this is legal. Don't do this here, do this here. I followed their advice, and it avoided me getting into trouble everywhere. So I have great respect for the career people. I might add, I've run 7 institutions in the last 45 years. The career staff at AID, Foreign Service, and Civil are the most competent managers and the smartest people I've worked with. And again, I'm not a liberal, okay? These insults are outrageous. And how does he know what's going on? He was there for 2 weeks and he's an expert in AID? Give me a break. It's not the hugest federal agency, but it's the most complex.
We're speaking with Andrew Natsios. He is former USAID administrator, now executive professor at Texas A&M. And relate how you went about dealing with the staff. You got there after the Clinton administration, And so
Right.
you had 8 years of a Democrat on leaning a little bit left, well, more than a little bit left, but it was the Clinton, what
Right.
constituted the left in the Clinton years, and came in. What is a good approach for someone coming in like that in dealing with that standing staff that you want to help you get the new agenda done?
Well, number one, I had worked there before under Bush 41, the elder Bush. So I knew at a lower level what AID was like. I also had a lot of friends, and I knew who I could trust. They referred to the aid career staff as a bunch of Marxists. A lot of the career staff are missionary kids. They're brought up in the developing world to missionary parents. They're Christians. They don't run around saying that, but I know what they are. And they go to church, but very quietly, but they speak the local language. They know the local culture. So Tom Stahl was a missionary kid brought up in Iraq. We sent him in as the mission director. He spoke perfect Iraqi Arabic, like an Iraqi would speak it. He knew every village in the country. We had a mission director in Pakistan who was brought up in Pakistan to a missionary family. He was mission director in Pakistan and Mongolia, wrote books about it. He's the president of a Christian college now in Pakistan, and he's retired. But they don't run around talking about those people. They talk about, I'm sure you can find a radical leftist somewhere who's out to lunch. But, I mean, it's a big, complex agency. Of course you're going to find that. The majority of the joke in AID with the career service is whenever we elect a Democrat, the agency gets screwed because they can't run the agency properly. Whenever the Republicans, they always send people over here who know how to run a federal agency and get it to do what we need to do. So actually, it's a joke, standing joke, that they always do better except right now under Trump. The first Trump administration, Mark Green was the administrator, and he's one of the best administrators the agency has had in 40 years, 50 years. He was very able, and the career peoples followed him.
Well, now we have a situation where people were locked out of the building and given leave, and the foreign-based staff told to come home in 30 days till if there's a legal challenge to all this and if there's an injunction, it could be after that all happens. What's your sense of the effect this will have on, I guess, America's standing, on our ability to provide aid, and what are some of the consequences here that you see?
I'm going to give you, I can say it's paralyzing, which it clearly is, but let me give you several examples. I have been educating students at Georgetown University first, and now at the Bush School at Texas A&M for the last 18 years, okay? All of my students have been fired or laid off. One of them is in the middle of a civil war on a DART team, a disaster assistance response team. He said, I don't know if I can get home. They just told me I was fired. He's being shot at, for heaven's sake, representing the United States, saving people's lives. He's been there 7 years, and they just told him he's fired. For what reason? It's ridiculous. And it's putting the people at risk, and it's putting him in, and he's a little bit demoralized, I would say. If you're in the middle of a civil war, putting your life at risk, and you have to put up with this crap in Washington, give me a break. I am just appalled by it, absolutely appalled by it. If they want to change AID, and they should, they need to appoint a competent manager like Mark Green, and you do it very quietly. I had every single program, when I took over at AID, reviewed one by one, took a couple of months, by a senior officer, and we ended, 60 or 70 different projects and programs which are out to lunch. I'll give you one example. They were trying to improve the self-image of prostitutes in Brazil. I said, number one, why are we in Brazil? It's a relatively wealthy country. Two, poor women go into prostitution, not as a career choice. Usually